morning, everybody, and thank you so much for coming. I'm absolutely delighted to see you, and we're all very, very happy to be back here after 2 years, and I hope you'll have a wonderful day and that it'll be safe and happy for everybody. I've just got a couple of notes to read out. I'm Jan Dalley. I'm the arts editor of the FT, and you know who my guest is, but I'm going to introduce him properly in a minute. I wanted to, first of all, give a big thank you to our sponsor, Gagosian Gallery, who have supported us for several years now, and we really appreciate it. They have a beautiful tent next door with lovely comfy sofas. So, just saying, they're very welcoming. So if you want to go and look at any of their beautiful books or chat to anyone, please avail yourself of that. So we've got a wonderful day, 7 sessions, thick and fast, coming here. Please, as you see, we have social distancing in our seating, and I just wanted to say that we will be taking audience questions at the end of each session in the usual way. The only difference is that there will be one of these coming around, but please don't hold it. It will be held for you. And please, if you speak into the mic and ask a question, please wear a mask while you're doing it. And it will be disinfected between each person, just to be on the safe side. We also wanted to tell you that any sessions you miss just around the place during the day, they will be on the festival website afterwards. We didn't have that last time, and people were often sad that they missed things, but this time you can have a proper catch-up after everything. So if you don't get to something, or there's a clash, or it's too full, or whatever, don't worry, you can find it later. There is lots of social media going on, hashtag FTWeekend Festival. And there is also a virtual FT Weekend gallery, which showcases some of the art work that we do through the year, which is in a tent over there. That's a virtual gallery that you just go in and explore by yourself. And so I think that's all I have to say, except once again to thank you for coming and to get to the proper bit of the morning, which is to introduce Edmund de Waal, who was with us 2 years ago, and here he is back again. So we think of him as really a friend of the festival. So he is, as you know, he's an artist. He's a master potter, working mostly in porcelain, though not entirely. And I'm sure you know many of his beautiful works. But he is also a best-selling author. Of course, there are many books, but The Hair with Amber Eyes probably is the one that most of us know best. That was in 2010. One that I love was The White Road, which is indeed about porcelain, one of my favorites. That was 2015. And now, Letters to Kamondo, his newest book, which is a very interesting set of letters, messages, thoughts, musings to a figure in the past, Nissim Camondo, who was an extraordinary collector and established a wonderful museum in Paris. And Edmund will tell you all about it himself, because he's going to show a set of slides and talk to them. So he'll do that for about 20 minutes. Then we'll talk to each other for a little bit, and then we will have time for your questions. But I think really, without more ado, I'm just going to welcome him and let him talk all about Letters to Kamondo.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you. Thank you for turning up. Thank you so much. It's lovely to be back in this unbelievably posh village fete that we have here. It's lovely. I love that you can't see all the dogs that are going past as I talk to you. And actually, what I will be doing with Jan is talking about really how this new book happened, which was a sort of mistake. And it's really trying to talk to you about all kinds of things, about memory and memorial, perhaps possibly, about belonging and family and assimilation and complicated things to do with how you navigate how you navigate the territory of where you come from or where you end up. And it begins in Paris again. I'm back in Paris. I'm back in the same part of Paris that I write about and talk about with The Hare with Amber Eyes, the Rue de Monceau, this incredible hill of golden houses built in the end of the 1860s, 1870s by families that have come from all over the Levant, come from Odessa, and have arrived to make their new lives as Parisians. And this is where the Ephrussi family, my own family, arrived in 1869. Charles Ephrussi lives up the road. He collects Impressionists. As you know, we have none of these left. And collects Netscape. And just down the road, 10 doors down, at exactly the same moment, from Constantinople comes another Jewish family, the Camondo family, a family of bankers, extremely cultured, and they arrive. And this is the house, this is the place that has haunted me for the 15, 20 years that I've been flaneuring up and down Rue de Monceau, knocking on doors and peering into windows and making myself a nuisance. And this is the house. It's an extraordinary house. It's like the Petit Trianon. You go in and it's marble and gilt furniture and all kinds of extraordinary furniture, but don't go up this staircase if you swerve left and left again. I found myself in this part of the house, going up the service staircase, up to the very top of the house, to the attics, the fifth floor, the floor that no one goes into. And there, over the years that I've been going back to this extraordinary house, there are doors, and you open these doors, and one cupboard you find Louis Vuitton luggage from 1926, another one you find light fittings from the turn of the century, you find the maids' rooms, and then you find another room and you open it up. And it's full of extraordinary archives. It's full of paper. It's full of banking records from Constantinople, carried there, kept up to date. It's full of hunting records and menus. It's full of great bound volumes of acquisitions. It's full of notes, and menus, and seating plans. What you have, in fact, is an extraordinary record in paper of an extraordinary family. And you start in this archive to begin to sort of feel the paper, and you begin to understand what it was that made Moïse de Camondo, the scion of this Jewish Ottoman family, who arrives as a child in this extraordinary house, what he's trying to do in this place. What he does wonderfully, and I'm very jealous, is to as soon as his parents have died, is to pull their house down. It's a moment that Freud on the Ringstrasse would understand better than anyone. And then he ships off. He sells, I've got all the catalogs, the auction catalogs. He sells all his parents' art. A wonderful moment. And then the oratory, this is extraordinary, the Jewish oratory in the house, he gives all the Judaica to the Musée de Cluny, where it is. And what does he do? He marries a good Jewish girl from the Caen d'Anvers who runs off with his riding instructor. There's a moment in The Hare with Amber Eyes where I say that when I published The Hare with Amber Eyes, I discovered how many French cousins I have. There's a moment in French society in about 1880, 1890, when you realize that everyone's having friendships with everyone else. But this man, Moïse de Camondo, here he is with his grown-up children, Béatrice and his son Nissim, and he builds them a house. He builds this house, and it's an extraordinary house. He builds it because what he wants to do is to create a new place which tells the story of becoming Parisian. So he chooses this moment of particular 18th century art, and the halls and the sculpture are extraordinary, and the Gobelin tapestries and the Aubusson carpets underfoot, and every single piece of furniture tells a story of this moment in French 18th century society when the moment of conversation between all kinds of people, this moment of Diderot and Voltaire, this moment of emancipation of the Jews. This is the moment that he chooses to create this collection. And this is Sèvres tables. It's all amazing. It's all amazing. You go into his library, and there is the whole run of Gazette des Beaux-Arts, edited by his friend Charles Froussy, up the hill. And then the back rooms, the butler's quarters, the kitchens, the menus. My God, these menus. They are enough, even at 11 o'clock in the morning. And the two children, these two good Jewish children, Nissim, who joins up in the first week of the Great War. Here he is with his father sitting in the beautiful garden, and he's killed. 1917, his plane crashes, and suddenly everything changes. This great house that was for his children becomes this strange memorial. Everything immediately stops. There's this pulse of collecting in his life which suddenly stops. And this is his son's bedroom. He hangs the portrait of his father, also Nissim, above the bed, and it becomes a memorial. And he decides in this moment, in this grief, there are extraordinary letters around this time. There's a letter, I was talking to you, it's in the book, about when Proust writes to him a letter of condolence. And there it is in your hands, this poignant letter from a neighbor saying, I understand this moment of pain for you. And what happens? The house changes. And Moïse, older, collects porcelain. We all collect porcelain. He makes a porcelain room, and he eats his meals by himself in this beautiful room. His daughter Beatrice leaves home and marries. She marries a good Jewish boy, Leon Reinach, and a Froussy boy, and suddenly this house becomes this. It becomes a memorial. And in his will, he says one incredible thing. This is taken at the moment that he died. He says, "My house is given to France." He gives the house in gratitude to France. He gives this house as a whole cadenced reflection of gratitude. It's an extraordinary moment, and there's a great ceremony in the Musée Camondo when his daughter and their son-in-law and the two children give the house to France. The catalogue is published. It's a great success. The press love it. And the children, the grandchildren are there in affluent Paris. They're riding. They're part of French society. And then, October 1940, the Wehrmacht walk in unopposed, and a week later, Pétain, that first terrible edict against the Jews, unprompted, and then the census, and then all those gradations of degradation, the yellow star, the queuing, not being able to ride a bicycle, the first roundups, the roundup of the Vélodrome d'Hiver, the establishment of that terrible camp Drancy guarded by French policemen, and the stripping away day by day of possessions, of rights, of families, and the stripping of collections. This extraordinary Renoir painting of Beatrice's mother, Irene, stolen, looted on the behest of Goering, and then on into Nazi Germany. And then you tell the story, and it's the story that we'll talk about this, the story that I think is just not known of that other cadence, not the cadence of bringing things together, of making this extraordinary, beautiful collection and holding it together, but the cadence of taking things apart and taking families apart. These 4 things in the archives are the cards from Drancy, Béatrice Reinach de Camondo, Anna n'est pas libérée, 6th of December 1942, and their daughter Fanny Louise Reinach, 4 grandparents, 6th of December, and then the 2 other, Leon and Bertrand, the son, who are caught trying to escape across the Pyrenees. And in Drancy, they are held, and Leon Reinach, the son-in-law, attempts, as part of this attempt to dig a tunnel in 1944, and they are discovered and they're deported to Auschwitz. And here is Bertrand, the last photograph of Bertrand, the grandson who was training to be an ebonist. He was training in the art of veneers, of how you put veneers down into furniture, something that he'd learnt in his grandfather's house. And they are all murdered in Auschwitz. And so what happens? What happens is that this house, which is a memorial, the Musée Nissim de Camondo, for a boy who gave his life for France, becomes something utterly, utterly, utterly different. It becomes this place where nothing is changed, and yet everything irrevocably, inutterably has changed. You walk in and you know Moïse's will. Don't change anything. I'm handing this on. I'm handing this forward, which is what you do as an act of assimilation, as an act of belonging. But this house is untouched. Since 1936, and when you walk through those doors into this house, what are you experiencing? You know, what kind of history are you experiencing? So I start to write. This is all last year, Jan. I start to write in that silence. I start to talk to Moïse. Actually, I walk round and round my studio talking to him because I can't go to Paris. I can't do my exhibition. And I write to him because letters are ways of working things out, and you can be angry or amused. The question of food and menus and collecting too much and gold furniture, or you can talk about belonging or family, and you can try and work out what it means to try and pass something forward, what you're trying to do by making a memorial. And it's just me talking aloud. And he never writes back. He just bloody doesn't write back. He just doesn't write back. And so, idiotically, I get the book finally, and I think I've written all these letters into the past, you know, to him and to myself and to my dad and to my kids, and no one writes back. That's why I'm here.
They do in a way. They do in a way, though. He does write back in a way because his whole house is a reply to you. And a reply to all of us, in a way. I went to the museum a few weeks ago because I'd read Edmund's book and I'd never even heard of this museum in Paris. So I went along, and because he not only bequeathed the house, but absolutely everything in it, and as you said, he commanded that nothing be moved. It is extraordinary. I mean, you do feel that somebody's just going to walk out of the kitchen any minute. But then you had access, when I longed to the attics and the storerooms and everything else. But it is an intensely sad place, because when you go through the magnificent entrance arch from the street into the courtyard of the house, one of the first things you see is the plaque on the wall talking about how Beatrice and her family all perished in Auschwitz, and that was absolutely the end of the line. There are no descendants. And so this magnificent family that had been through so much and done so much and collected so much were just, that was it. They were gone. But anyway, let me go back after that. Thank you for that wonderful explanation. And you practically made me cry. It's a very, very sad story. But it's a sort of magnificent story as well, because he did manage to... The house is there, it is preserved. Thank God he gave it away early enough, because he gave it away in the 30s, didn't he?
So there's this strange moment, and there's actually a marvellous book, which came out the same week as mine, by James Macaulay, called The House of Fragile Things, which is a remarkably, remarkably good book, wonderful book, which is about Jewish families in the Belle Epoque. And there's this whole chain of people giving things away, all at the same moment. There's an amazing Villa Kerelos in the south of France, also in a Frissi Rheinach house, which is built like a Greek villa, which is given to given to Institute of in 1926. The Villa Frissi Rochil is given the same day. Everyone is giving things away because they're grateful, because this is the extraordinary thing that France, Republican France, has this strange meaning for Jews, that actually it is the country that welcomes most generously. We're not talking about the Dreyfus affair yet, but welcomes most generously, the idea of citizenship. And there's this whole extraordinary thing where people say, and write about it in philosophy and Jewish theology, and I've read all this stuff, where they go, actually, do you know what? This is, in some ways, Republican France is the new Israel. This is the place where we will be welcomed most. And so they do give these houses away, and they are intact. And there's this sort of pulse, Jan, which is something that I keep thinking I'm going to work out in a book or an exhibition, which is this thing about collecting and thing about diaspora, that you try and keep something together. But it's so effing fissile, the world. It's so fissile that things fall apart. They get looted, they get broken. Your family is torn apart. You lose things. They go out into the world. And so there's this whole push and pull between wanting to tell the stories of belonging and keeping things together, like the Musée Camondo, but also knowing that there's that breaking, that fissure the whole time. Sorry, I have no idea what your question was at all. I have no idea where I went with that.
I don't think we care.
I'm sorry.
I don't think we care.
I'm so sorry.
Well, it is extraordinary when you look at when you're in the house and when you look at the dates, you realise that Kamondo collected at an incredible speed.
Yeah.
So that once he decided that he wanted to make this full, gorgeous 18th century environment, he must have been buying something every day, practically. I mean, almost more than that. And you've seen all these records. But before we go there, let's just go back again to your interaction with him, which I think is what really fascinates me. I mean, you say that you were writing letters into the void. And in a way you were, but also I became very, very interested in how you used your imaginary conversations with him to work out your own feelings and thoughts, and the way in which his impulses as a collector and as a creator of a family and a dynasty, he hoped, when didn't happen, how that marries up with your own impulses as an artist and what you make, because there could hardly be a bigger contrast between your spare, often quite minimal, very, very delicate creations and the incredible sort of curlicue, luxuriant, gilded, complicated thing that he liked. I mean, this is two ways of looking, two visions, really. Isn't
Well,
it?
I'm not, haven't yet reached my Belle Epoque period of in my artistic creation yet. Beware, it may occur. I'll let you know.
But tell us more about
so-
the writing of the letters.
So
the actual writing.
the thing is that I do talk to people in the I just and it sort of doesn't, they are dead. I do know that, but actually when I'm there and illicitly sitting in one of those chairs you're not supposed to sit in, or taking books out of his library and looking at them, or going through that correspondence from dealers, where you know how dealers are, this surely would be the most perfect pendant for the other thing you've already got, etc. Blah 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 blah, all that stuff. I know him. I know this man. He's so lonely. He's so lonely. But he knows he's got a compulsion and obsession, which I really understand. And what he's doing is making an installation. Installations are horrible, foul art world speak. Cringingly horrible. But what he is doing is making an environment, because what he wants to do is to make a place which is so perfect that Voltaire can walk through that door and know where he is. He's absolutely convinced he can do it. So he's talking to the past, and I'm talking to him, and I absolutely know that impulse. So I get to know him, and I get to love him. This sort of rich, complicated man who is kvetching about all this stuff, and but I know him. He's also exactly the same age as my great-grandfather, who was Vienna and did the whole thing in Vienna. So and so there is this funny. It's not funny. There is this serious sort of segueing of family into family into family, of understanding how you can get caught in this beautiful trap of thinking that you have assimilated.
And that you've made yourself safe.
You have made yourself safe.
And left no surface uncluttered.
If there's enough stuff, you are no longer a traveling Jew. If you've got it all there, you're all right.
Well, now, of course, to move it into the present, you are going to literally insert your own work in amongst his, probably for the first time since he walked out of the door himself, because on the 7th of October, Edmund opens an exhibition of his own work placed within the house, and actually, so your vision and his vision. So tell us, first of all, how on earth you persuaded them to let you do that,
well,
then what you're doing with it.
I thank God I didn't have to ask. So it was, I've been haunting this place. So about 5 years ago, the director of the museum, Olivier Gabet, asked me. And so it's been sort of there as a thing. And it's a huge, I must keep my hands still. It's a huge, complicated thing, because there's never been anything contemporary at all in the house. Nothing has happened. And there's his bloody will, which says, don't move anything. So I have to take that seriously. And this isn't the beginning of a great kind of, let's have have this artist this year and that artist that year. This is it. I'm doing this thing, and then it's back to the dust. So what I've done is to try and re-inhabit parts of the house, very quietly. And in fact, it's been one of those exhibitions. My very, very first exhibition I did, it was decades ago, was a very quiet exhibition in a modernist house in Devon, where it was so quiet that a journalist came and went away furious because she couldn't find any of the work at all. And that seems to me it's still my benchmark of aspiration, that you should go to an exhibition and not find my work. So you will, because you come into that courtyard, that beautiful courtyard, and I've made benches out of stone, this beautiful golden stone, so that people can sit there. And each of the benches has a little bit of golden lead on it, a bit of kintsugi, a little bit of kind of a break and a mark there. And it's just a kind of, it's just a place to be. And you go in, and then in the kitchen there's, where the butler wrote the menus, there's a broken bowl. A bowl of broken shards, bad washing up. And then, as you go through the house, there are moments, in his library, all the desks that he used, I've written into porcelain. I've written some of these letters into porcelain, very, very thin, translucent tiles, which are then sort of stacked in some of his desks. And I've done memorial pieces. I have done things with lead and porcelain in different bits of the house. And this is the profoundly irritating bit, is for everyone but me, is that in the attics I've made some very beautiful, I think, porcelain vessels, and I'm putting them back in cupboards in the attics, and then closing the doors again. So
we really can't see them?
No. And that's because you can't make an exhibition out of the show. You can't talk to the enormity of loss by performing. What you can do is just indicate some moments of fracture, some moments of fracture in the house, some moments of warmth and conversation about him and his children and grandchildren, and you can do that by putting something down in somewhere. But actually, that top floor where we began, those attics, the archives, the things which are truly in dust, that's needs just acknowledging that that's there. So, I'm taking.
So you're laying down memories. You're laying down more memories.
I have no idea what I'm doing at all. But it's all right not to see everything. It really is. And it's also, when I write books and I go out and do stuff, and people say, why didn't you write about that? There's some, not you lot, because you're really sophisticated, but there's a kind of poking thing where you go, what more? More. Give me more. And there's a moment actually where you go, actually no, really no, Jan. There's a moment where you actually enough. So there's a kind of enough moment in books and in other stuff.
Well, you understand the enough moment. I'm not sure that your correspondent did. He was of the more is more school of thinking, wasn't he?
He more is sometimes more. I mean, imagine a half-hearted Petit Trianon, or a kind of lackluster Musée Camondo, or a kind of Frick who gave up, and decided, what the hell, no, I won't. It actually, and we've got Kenwood House, for God's sake, beautifully there as a present. So actually, thank God for people who go more is more. I mean, thank God for, you know,
That's a very good moment, I think, to open it to the floor for questions. Before I do that, I just wanted to remind you that Edmund will be signing copies of his book immediately after this, although he's got to run, he's got to be in Cornwall tonight for a birthday party, so he's, and he's just come from St Andrews, so we're doubly honoured that you've made time for us, and that the October exhibition in Paris is only the beginning.
Yes.
Do you want to say what else is happening?
Well, there's the most incredible thing happening, actually, which is November, a couple of weeks after Paris opens. That wasn't me. And that's in Vienna. There's this thing which has been going for 25 years, Jan, called Eine Stadt, ein Buch, one city, one book, where the city of Vienna, the mayor and the president together, Austria, decide to give a book to a city, which is such an amazing thing. So on November the 8th, I'm in Vienna because they're printing 100,000 copies of The Hair with Amber Eyes and giving them across Vienna. And if you want to talk about restitution and you want to talk about stories landing in particular places, or, you know, that's beyond anything I could ever have imagined. So that's ahead of me.
It is wonderful. Many congratulations. In German, presumably.
In German.
In German, yes.
Yes.
That's wonderful. And then in New York, later in the autumn, there is an exhibition about the Efrussi family.
At the Jewish Museum.
At the Jewish Museum,
Yeah.
yes. So there's a remarkable amount. Now, let's take some questions. I'm sure there will be. Could I just repeat, please, to wear your mask when you... so we've got Clive. Hello, Clive, down here, and then there. Yes, gotcha. Yes, it's here first, please. Oh, here we go. Lovely. There you go.
Thanks. Very, very moving listening to our letters to Kamondo in the audio book on the way to Cornwall. I very movingly read, so thank you.
Thank you so
much. My question is, you describe very movingly what happened to individual Jews in France between particularly 42 and 44. What happened to their things they left the country, and in particular the Musée de Camondo, given that was owned by the state? Did the German occupiers and the French collaborators try to erase temporarily its Jewish heritage? I'd love to know that angle, which I don't think is in the book.
It isn't in the book, and it's a fascinating story because actually it was preserved due to an extraordinary museum director. All the contents were taken and stored in the Loire in a chateau for safekeeping. But actually, it wasn't looted because it was a national collection. So, at that moment, it's very, very interesting. The penumbra, the Jewish sort of fact that it's a Jewish collection is put aside because it had been given to France. But Villa Kerolos, which is another of the family houses down in the south of France, the library is burned. Actually, in front of the Reinach, the Reinach family who actually had the library, he has to watch his own library being burnt in front of him. So there are all these different things that happen to Jewish collections, and they're all slightly different. I will say that, with some anger, I have to say that you can go to these places and there is almost no record of the fact of what happened to these families. You know, there is a plaque at the Musée Camondo as you go in saying that the family died for France. Well, actually, no, they really didn't die for France at all. They were murdered. And so you go to these collections, and it's unlike going around Berlin, the stumble stones and things. You can go around the whole of Paris and not be aware of all those extraordinary, painful stories. It's a good story. So, yeah.
Thank you, Clive. This gentleman in the yellow shirt, I think, was next, or whichever. That lady, next one, yes.
Thank you very much. I've been to the Musée Kamondo years ago, and I have two questions relating to collecting. The first question is, do you think that excessive acquisition can be seen as a form of compensation? First question. And the second question is a more practical one, and that is, without access to telephony, the internet, etc., did the great collectors like Camondo and Gulbenkian have agents who bid at foreign auctions for them? Because, as you know, the silver at the Musée Kamondo was from the collection of Catherine the Great, etc.
Two very good questions. Just to reiterate, the first is excessive consumption in some ways an act of compensation? Well, yes. I could go on, but absolutely yes. I mean, it's very much that kind of feeling of that actually, if you have enough around you, that you are safe, that you are absolutely stable. The second question, which is before the internet, do these great collectors have agents? Absolutely extraordinary. So if you look at the correspondence with the dealers, there are agents in every country working away, and everyone is always telling the silver comes from Catherine the Great, etc. The answer is yes, and that there's a whole book to be written. There's a good book on Duveen that's just come out, which is eye-stretching, about how Duveen sells art at that moment to the over-rich. But it hasn't yet happened with the Camondo story.
Lovely. Ladies next.
Thank you so much for telling these amazing stories which shed light and bring life back to these families, which is absolutely amazing. I want just to follow on from that gentleman over there and from what you said. Do you think, with your high profile and with what you're doing in Paris, that the state, the people in authority, will now make memorials, make the story better known? Do you get any indication that somebody's communicating with you?
No, I mean, that's the short answer. I mean, the presence of all our conversations at the moment are shot through with about memorials, where they live within our culture and how we memorialize and how we actualize complicated bits of history and make sense of them. I think you can walk. There's a memorial at Drancy, a small museum at Drancy. I don't think there's any indication at all that there's going to be some more substantial French memorial in the middle of Paris, because, of course, that's not the narrative. The narrative is 3/4 of Jewish citizens in France survived the Shoah. That's the narrative that you get all the time when you're talking in Paris, whatever. Why concentrate on this when there's a much more positive story to talk about? And so you have to navigate that the whole time, and it's hard work navigating that. It really is. It's very hard work navigating people who are pushing back, saying, actually, in some ways, it's inappropriate to tell these stories. Why are you talking about the Milicienne? Why are you talking about Drumont, or bringing Dreyfus back into the conversation? And the reality is, of course, that they're still there. It's an unfinished conversation. It's not like I've dragged it back in. It's still live. And, I'm talking to Moïse de Camondo as if he's sitting between Jan and me, or perhaps the other side of you, Jan. But I'm also talking, because all this stuff, the language and how the language of all that painful stuff is still absolutely palpable in France.
Is there audio okay for this?
Question here. Yeah. Have we got another mic coming?
There's someone in the middle
Yes.
here.
The lady with the blue. Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Maybe this is a bit of a strange question, but reading your books, I'm always transported to some kind of golden age where everyone was so much more cultured and learned than they are now. And I wondered if you think that that time really has passed and we have become, as a civilization, less cultured, or whether these amazing families still exist where they're all so knowledgeable and so, you know, so wonderfully learned. And if that is the case, where in the world is that happening now? Who will be writing your books in 100, 150 years' time? That's what I always wonder.
So, sorry about the plane. I don't know if you could hear the question. Do you want to
No, I
recap
don't
it?
want to answer.
You don't want to answer?
I mean, it's a marvelous question about golden ages, and of course, you know, I kind of lucked out with a bit of history, in one sense, in that I'm talking about a kind of interface between art and literature and politics, which is really fascinating. And you know, having a Viennese grandmother, you know, she's always she's there, by the way. She's there, my Viennese grandmother. She's going, you know, well, you haven't read enough, you know. You know, study a bit more. Are your footnotes correct? You know, so she's on my shoulder going, you know, actually, come on, now do the work. Whether there's a golden age ahead of us or somewhere elsewhere, I don't know. I look and think that there's a lot of really passionate, engaged, wonderful things going on, and I'm a big believer in the internet as well. I think it's rather fabulous. He sounds like a middle-aged man. So I don't know is the answer. I don't know.
Well, perhaps we've got a golden age. We just don't know it while it's happening. We've got time. Really lightning question, please, because I'm afraid we will have to stop.
Now you know the Kamondo, are you going to continue to write to him?
That's a very interesting left field question to derail me. Am I going to continue to write to Camondo? I continue to talk to him. I am not quite at liberty to tell you what the next book is going to be. But perhaps in this wonderful village fete atmosphere, in a few years' time, I'll be allowed to come back and tell Jan.
Not, but I mean, before a few years have gone by. I'm so sorry that we've run out of time. Thank you all very, very much for coming, but mainly, Edmund,
No,
thank
Jan,
you
thank you so
for the most beautiful and extraordinary.
Thank you, Jan.
And Edmund will be in the books tent right now.